Before the world asks anything from you, give thanks for what you already have, because a grateful heart turns ordinary mornings into powerful beginnings. Every morning began the same way for Ariv, with urgency, noise, and a sense of being behind before the day had even truly started. His alarm would ring sharply, pulling him out of sleep, and within seconds his mind would flood with thoughts of unfinished tasks, deadlines, and expectations waiting for him. There was no pause, no stillness, just movement. He would rush out of bed, check his phone, scroll through messages, and instantly feel overwhelmed by everything demanding his attention. His mornings were not his own. They belonged to stress. Even simple routines felt heavy. Brushing his teeth became something to get done quickly. Breakfast was often skipped or eaten in haste. The sunlight that filtered through his window went unnoticed. The quiet calm of early morning completely ignored. Ariv wasn't living his mornings, he was surviving them. As the days passed, this habit of hurry began shaping his entire life. Small problems felt bigger than they were. A delay in traffic irritated him. A minor mistake at work ruined his mood. He carried an invisible weight, a constant dissatisfaction that he couldn't quite explain. No matter how much he achieved, it never felt enough. There was always something missing, something wrong. One morning, while sitting on a crowded bus, Ariv found himself unusually still. Perhaps it was exhaustion, or maybe just a moment of awareness. But instead of looking at his phone, he looked outside. That's when he noticed him. An old man sat quietly by the window, his face calm, his eyes gently fixed on the rising sun. There was no rush in him, no tension, just a soft, peaceful smile, as if he had everything he needed in that single moment. The golden light of the sunrise reflected in his eyes, and for a brief second, time seemed to slow down around him. Ariv couldn't understand it. How could someone be so calm in a world that never stopped demanding more? How could he sit there, doing nothing, yet look so complete? That image stayed with Ariv long after he stepped off the bus. For the first time, he began to question his own way of living. Was the problem really the world around him? Or was it the way he was starting each day? That morning, something small but powerful shifted inside him. Not a solution, not a transformation, but a question. And sometimes, a single question is all it takes to begin a change. The image of the old man stayed with Ariv long after that morning. It wasn't just the calm expression or the gentle smile. It was the feeling that came with it. A kind of peace Ariv had not experienced in a long time. All day, between meetings and messages, his mind kept returning to that quiet moment on the bus. It felt unusual, almost unsettling, to realize that something so simple could hold so much meaning. The next morning, Ariv made a different choice. Instead of scrolling through his phone, he boarded the bus a little earlier and looked around, hoping to see the old man again. For a few moments, he wondered if it had just been coincidence. But then, there he was, sitting in the same spot, watching the sunrise, as if it were the most important part of his day. This time, Ariv didn't just observe. He walked up to him. There was a slight hesitation in his steps, as if he wasn't sure how to begin. After all, how do you ask someone why they look peaceful? But curiosity pushed him forward. He greeted the old man politely and sat beside him. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The silence felt different, not awkward, but calm. Finally, Ariv broke it. He asked the question that had been on his mind since yesterday. How can you sit here so peacefully when life is so busy, so demanding, so full of pressure? The old man turned toward him with a warm, understanding smile. There was no surprise in his eyes, as if he had heard this question many times before. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked back at the rising sun, taking in its warmth, before speaking in a soft, steady voice. He said that peace is not found outside, it is created within. And the simplest way he knew to create it was through gratitude. Ariv listened carefully, still unsure of what that really meant. The old man explained that every morning, before he speaks, before he moves, and before he allows the world to enter his mind, he takes a moment to say thank you. Not for anything extraordinary, but for simple things, the chance to wake up, the ability to breathe, the people in his life, even the lessons hidden in difficulties. At first, Arif almost dismissed it. It sounded too easy, too small to make any real difference. How could a few words of thanks change the weight he felt every day? Sensing his doubt, the old man gently smiled again. He told Arif that most people are trained to notice what is missing, what is wrong, what needs fixing. But gratitude trains the mind in the opposite direction. It teaches you to see what is already there. And when you change what you see, you slowly change how you feel. He didn't try to convince Arif with long explanations or grand ideas. Instead, he offered something simple. Try it for 7 days. No pressure, no expectations. Just a quiet practice every morning. 3 things to be grateful for before the day begins. Arif sat there, thinking. Part of him still felt unsure, even skeptical. But another part of him, the part that remembered that peaceful smile, felt curious enough to try. Sometimes, the smallest suggestions carry the greatest power. And though Arif didn't realize it yet, this simple practice was about to change more than just his mornings. The next morning arrived quietly, almost as if it were waiting to see what Arif would do differently. His alarm rang, just like every other day. But this time, he didn't reach for his phone. His hand paused midair, remembering the old man's words. For a moment, the familiar urge to scroll, to rush, to begin the cycle again pulled at him. But something inside him resisted. Slowly, he sat up on his bed. The room was still. The early light of dawn filtered softly through the curtains, painting the walls in a gentle glow. It was a kind of silence Arif wasn't used to noticing. Usually, his mornings were filled with noise, both around him and within him. But today, there was a small space, a pause. He took a deep breath. At first, it felt uncomfortable. His mind wandered quickly, jumping from one thought to another. What if I'm late? What do I need to finish today? Did I reply to that message? The noise hadn't disappeared. It was still there, trying to take control. Gratitude, in that moment, felt unfamiliar, almost unnatural. But he tried anyway. Softly, almost hesitantly, he whispered, "Thank you." The word felt strange at first, like something he hadn't used in a long time for himself. He wasn't sure what to say next. His mind searched for something meaningful, something worthy of gratitude. And then, slowly, the simplest things began to surface. "Thank you for this new day." He paused, letting the words settle. It wasn't a grand achievement, just the truth. He had another chance to live, to begin again. "Thank you for my health." He stretched his hands slightly, feeling the ease of movement he had always taken for granted. "Thank you for my family." Images of familiar faces crossed his mind. Moments of care, support, and presence that he rarely stopped to appreciate. It wasn't perfect. His voice wasn't confident, and his thoughts still wandered. But something subtle shifted. His breathing slowed down. The tightness in his chest eased. The rush that usually pushed him out of bed lost some of its grip. For the first time in a long while, Arif didn't feel like he was starting his day from behind. He sat there for another minute, doing nothing. No phone, no hurry, just being present. It was a small moment, almost invisible, but it felt different, lighter. As he went through his morning routine, nothing outside had changed. The same tasks waited for him. The same responsibilities existed. But inside, there was a quiet calm that hadn't been there before. When something minor went wrong, he noticed it, but it didn't overwhelm him. When he stepped outside, he became aware of the cool morning air, the sound of birds, the rhythm of life waking up around him. The day wasn't perfect, but it wasn't heavy either. That evening, as Arif reflected on his day, he realized something important. Gratitude hadn't solved all his problems, but it had changed how he experienced them. It gave him space. It gave him control over his reaction. And for the first time, he felt a small sense of hope. Maybe this simple practice was not as small as he had thought. Maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of something bigger. What began as a hesitant experiment slowly turned into a quiet habit. Arif continued his morning practice, not because he was certain it would change his life, but because he was curious about the calm it seemed to bring. Each day, before the rush could take over, he chose to pause. 3 simple thank yous. That was all. At first, he had to search for them. His mind, trained for years to notice problems, would hesitate. But as the days passed, something remarkable began to happen. Gratitude no longer felt forced. It started to flow naturally. Thank you for this peaceful morning. Thank you for the opportunity to work. Thank you for the strength to handle today. These words began to shape his thoughts. Arav noticed subtle changes. The same morning sunlight that once went unnoticed now felt warm and comforting. The cup of tea he used to gulp down absent-mindedly became a moment of pause. Even the sound of birds outside his window, something he had ignored for years, started to feel like a gentle welcome to the day. Nothing around him had changed, but everything felt different. At work, the transformation became clearer. Challenges still appeared, deadlines still existed, and not every moment was easy. But Arav's reactions were no longer the same. When a problem came up, he didn't immediately feel overwhelmed. Instead, there was a brief moment of calm, a space where he could think instead of react. That space changed everything. He began to handle situations with more clarity. Small mistakes didn't ruin his mood. Delays didn't frustrate him the way they used to. He found himself responding with patience rather than irritation. Even his conversations with others became more positive, more present. People around him started to notice. "You seem different lately," a colleague mentioned one afternoon. Arav smiled, unsure of how to explain something so simple yet so powerful. How could he tell them that all he had done was change the way he started his mornings? But the biggest change wasn't outside, it was within him. The constant feeling of not enough slowly began to fade. In its place grew a sense of appreciation, a quiet understanding that life didn't have to be perfect to be meaningful. Gratitude didn't remove difficulties, but it gave him strength to face them without losing himself. Arav realized something important. Gratitude was not about pretending everything was good. It was about recognizing that even within imperfection, there was always something valuable, something worth acknowledging. And the more he focused on those small moments, the more they seemed to grow. His mornings were no longer rushed battles against time. They became a foundation, a steady, calm beginning that carried him through the rest of the day. The habit that once felt awkward had now become essential, something he looked forward to rather than something he had to remember. Without realizing it, Arav had shifted, not in a dramatic, overnight transformation, but in a steady, meaningful way. His perspective had changed, and with it, his experience of life. The weight he once carried every morning had lightened, replaced by a quiet strength that stayed with him throughout the day. And it all began with 3 simple words: thank you. Weeks passed, and what once felt like a small experiment had now become a part of Arav's identity. Gratitude was no longer something he had to remember. It was something he felt. Each morning began with awareness, with stillness, with a quiet sense of appreciation that set the tone for everything that followed. One morning, as Arav stepped out of his home, he noticed something familiar. A young man hurried past him, eyes fixed on his phone, shoulders tense, breath uneven. There was frustration written all over his face, the same restlessness, the same invisible pressure Arav used to carry every single day. For a moment, it felt like looking at a reflection of his past self. Arav paused, not because he needed to, but because he wanted to. He watched the man disappear into the crowd, rushing into a day that had probably already begun with stress. And in that moment, Arav felt a deep sense of clarity. Life hadn't become easier for him. His responsibilities hadn't reduced. Challenges still appeared without warning. But something fundamental had changed. He had changed. He was no longer controlled by the rush. He had learned how to begin differently. As he continued walking, he felt the cool morning air brush against his face. The world around him seemed alive in a way he had never truly noticed before. The distant sound of footsteps, the rhythm of daily life slowly unfolding, the soft light of a rising sun painting everything with warmth. These were not extraordinary moments, yet they felt meaningful. That was the power of gratitude. It didn't add more to life. It revealed what was already there. Arif realized that gratitude was not a one-time practice or a temporary solution. It was a way of living, a choice he could make every single day, regardless of circumstances. Whether the day brought success or struggle, calm or chaos, he had the ability to anchor himself in appreciation, and that anchor gave him strength. It reminded him that no matter how demanding life became, there would always be something to be thankful for, something steady, something grounding. Even on difficult days, gratitude became his way of finding light in the darkness, of staying centered when everything else felt uncertain. As he reached the bus stop, Arif looked around, almost expecting to see the old man again. But this time, it didn't matter whether he was there or not. The lesson had already taken root. He smiled, not out of habit, but out of understanding, because he knew something now that he hadn't known before. You don't need a perfect life to feel peaceful. You only need a grateful heart. And with that realization, Arif made a quiet promise to himself to never let his mornings slip back into unconscious hurry, to always begin with awareness, with appreciation, with intention, because he had discovered a truth that would guide him for the rest of his life. When you start your day with gratitude, you don't just change your morning, you change the way you live. And now, the question is not about Arif anymore, it's about you. How will you begin your next morning? Will you wake up and rush into the same cycle of stress? Or will you choose something different? Because the truth is, nothing in your life has to change overnight for you to feel better. You don't need more success, more time, or fewer problems. You only need a new beginning, a small, intentional moment of gratitude. 3 simple words can shift your entire day. 3 small acknowledgments can calm your restless mind. 3 quiet seconds can give you the strength you've been searching for. Don't wait for the perfect day to feel thankful. Create a powerful day by being thankful. Tomorrow morning, before you touch your phone, before the world demands your attention, pause, take a deep breath, and say thank you for your life, for your strength, for another chance to begin again. Do it once, then do it again the next day. Because gratitude is not just a habit, it is a transformation waiting to happen. Start tomorrow. Start small. But most importantly, start.